Good evening, and good afternoon, whichever it is to you. Hope everybody's had a good day. Hope the Lord's blessed you. Today we're in chapter 77 of the book of Jaser. And I would also like to invite anyone out there to my channel if you would like to check it out. And if you like it, I hope you'll subscribe to me. I'm also on Facebook too. And I've been a busy little man here lately, doing 2 streams a day and, 3 streams now. Been helping a friend of mine, Miss Marty Eves. You can check her out. I'm on there too. She calls her time Coffee Time with Jesus. And everyone's welcome there. Be glad to have you there too. But I've been helping her out and contributing whenever I can. Lord's really using me here lately. But you're welcome to join us on that platform too. But check out my channel, and if you like it, please subscribe. And I have a friend who's coming on here in a little while, around 9 o'clock. You may want to join us. If you like the content there, you can like and subscribe. Love to have you there too. But we're in chapter 77, the book of Jaser, Moses' rod. Adikam was 20 years old when he reigned over Egypt. He reigned 4 years. 2444, Adikam begins his reign. In the 206th year of Israel's going down to Egypt did Adikam reign over Egypt. But he continued not so long in his reign over Egypt as his fathers had continued their reigns. For Milal, his father, reigned 94 years in Egypt, but he was 10 years sick and died, for he had been wicked before the Lord. And all the Egyptians called the name of Adikam Pharaoh, like the name of his fathers, as was their custom to do in Egypt. And all the wise men of Pharaoh called the name of Adikam Ahaz for short. It's called Ahaz in the Egyptian language. And Adikam was exceedingly ugly, and he was a cubit and a span, and he had a great beard which reached to the soles of his feet. And Pharaoh sat upon his father's throne to reign over Egypt. And he conducted the government of Egypt in his wisdom. And whilst he reigned, he exceeded his father and all the preceding kings in wickedness, and increased his yoke over the children of Israel. And he went with his servants to Goshen to the children of Israel. And he strengthened the labor over them, and he said unto them, Complete your work, each day's task, and let not your hands slacken from our work from this day forward, as ye did in the days of my father. And he placed officers over them from among the children of Israel. And over these officers he placed taskmasters from his servants. Excuse me. Right. Okay. Excuse me for a moment. I'll go where we can hear instead of the loud noise. Sorry about the interruption. Somebody's come to pick up. And observe the daily measure of bricks. Diminish not anything. And it shall come to pass that if you are deficient in your daily bricks, I will put your young children in their stead. And the taskmasters of Egypt did so in those days as Pharaoh had ordered them. And whenever any deficiency was found in the children of Israel's measure of their daily bricks, the taskmasters of Pharaoh would go to the wives of the children of Israel and take infants of the children of Israel to the number of bricks deficient. They would take them by force from their mothers' laps and put them in the building instead of the bricks. Whilst their fathers and mothers were crying over them and weeping when they heard the weeping voices of their infants in the wall of the building. And the taskmasters prevailed over Israel, that the Israelites should place their children in the building, so that a man placed his son in the wall and put mortar over him, while his eyes wept over him and his tears ran down his child. And the taskmasters of Israel did so to the babes of Israel for many days, and no one pitied or had compassion over the babes of the children of Israel. And the number of all the children killed in the building was 270, some whom they had built upon instead of the bricks which, and some whom they had drawn out dead from the building. And the labor imposed upon the children of Israel in the days of Edicam exceeded in hardship that which they performed in the days of his father. And the children of Israel sighed every day on account of their heavy work. For they had said to themselves, Behold, when Pharaoh shall die, his son will rise up and lighten our work. But they increased the latter work more than the former. And the children of Israel sighed at this, and God remembered to them his covenant which he had made with Abraham and Isaac and Jacob. God saw the burden of the children of Israel and their heavy work in those days, and he determined to deliver them. And Moses the son of Amram was still confined in the dungeon in those days. In the house of Reuel the Midianite, and Zipporah the daughter of Reuel did support him with food secretly day by day. And Moses was confined in the dungeon in the house of Reuel for 10 years. And at the end of 10 years, which was the first year of the reign of Pharaoh over Egypt in the place of his father, Zipporah said to her father Reuel, "No person inquires or seeks after the Hebrew man, whom thou didst bind in prison now 10 years. Now therefore, if it seem good in thy sight, let us send and see whether he is living or dead." But her father knew not that she had supported him. And Reuel her father answered and said to her, "Has ever such a thing happened, that a man should be shut up in a prison without food for 10 years? Zipporah answered her father, and does wonders for them at all times. He it was who delivered Abraham from Ur of the Chaldeans, and Isaac from the sword of his father, and Jacob from the angel of the Lord who wrestled with him at the ford of Jabbok. Also with this man has he done many things. He delivered him from the river in Egypt and from the sword of Pharaoh, from the children of Cush. So also can he deliver him from famine and make him live." And the thing seemed good in the sight of Reuel, and he did according to the word of his daughter, and sent to the dungeon to ascertain what became of Moses. He saw, and behold, the man Moses was living in the dungeon, standing up on his feet, and praising and praying to the God of his ancestors. And Reuel commanded Moses to be brought out of the dungeon. So they shaved him and changed his prison garments, and he ate bread. And afterward Moses went into the garden of Reuel, which was behind the house. And he there prayed to the Lord his God, and had done mighty wonders for him. And it was that whilst he prayed, he looked opposite him, and behold, a sapphire stick was placed in the ground, which was planted in the midst of the garden. And he approached the stick, and he looked, and behold, the name of the Lord God of hosts was engraved thereon, written and developed upon the stick. And he read it and stretched forth his hand, and he plucked it like a forest tree from the thicket, and the stick was in his hand. And this is the stick with which all the works of our God were performed, after he had created heaven and earth, and all the host of them, seas, rivers, and all their fishes. And when God had driven Adam from the Garden of Eden, he took the stick in his hand, and went and tilled the ground from which he was taken. And the stick came down to Noah, and was given to Shem and his descendants, until it came into the hand of Abraham the Hebrew. And when Abraham had given all he had to his son Isaac, he also gave to him this stick. And when Jacob had fled to Padan Aram, he took it into his hand. And when he returned to his father, he had not left it behind him. Also, when he went down to Egypt, he took it into his hand and gave it to Joseph, one portion above his brethren, for Jacob had taken it by force from his brother Esau. And after the death of Joseph, the nobles of Egypt came into the house of Joseph, and the stick came into the hand of Reuel the Midianite. When he went out of Egypt, he took it in his hand and planted it in his garden. And all the mighty men of Kenites tried to pluck it when they endeavored to get Zipporah his daughter, but they were unsuccessful. So that stick remained planted in the garden of Reuel until he came who had a right to it and took it. And when Reuel saw the stick in the hand of Moses, he wondered at it, and he gave him his daughter Zipporah for a wife. Hold on a minute, guys. Moses' Call, chapter 78. At that time died Baal-Shannon, son of Akbor, king of Edom, and was buried in the house in the land of Edom. And after his death, the children of Esau sent to the land of Edom and took from there a man who was in Edom, whose name was Hadad. And they made him king over them in place of Baal-Hanan, their king. 2446, Hadad given Edom. And Hadad reigned over the children of Edom 48 years. And when he reigned, he resolved to fight against the children of Moab, to bring them under the power of the children of Esau as they were before. But he was not able, because the children of Moab heard this thing. And they rose up and hastened to elect a king over them from amongst their brethren. And they afterward gathered together a great people, and sent to the children of Ammon their brethren for help to fight against Hadad king of Edom. And Hadad heard the thing which the children of Moab had done, and was greatly afraid of them, and refrained from fighting against them. In those days Moses, the son of Amram, in Midian, took Zipporah, the daughter of Reuel the Midian, for a wife. Zipporah walked in the ways of the daughters of Jacob. She was nothing short of the righteousness of Sarah, Rebekah, Rachel, and Leah. And Zipporah conceived and bare a son, and he called his name Gershom, for he said, I was a stranger in a foreign land. But he circumcised not his foreskin at the command of Reuel his father-in-law. And she conceived again and bare a son, but circumcised his foreskin, and called his name Eleazar. For Moses said, because the God of my fathers was my help and delivered me from the sword of Pharaoh. And Pharaoh, king of Egypt, greatly increased the labor of the children of Israel in those days, and continued to make his yoke heavier upon the children of Israel. And he ordered a proclamation to be made in Egypt, saying, give no more straw to the people to make bricks with. Let them go and gather themselves straw as they can find it. Also the tale of bricks which they shall make, let them give each day, and diminish nothing from them, for they are idle in their work. And the children of Israel heard this, and they mourned and sighed, and they cried unto the Lord on account of the bitterness of their souls. And the Lord heard the cries of the children of Israel, and saw the oppression with which the Egyptians oppressed them. And the Lord was jealous of his people and his inheritance, and heard their voice, and resolved to take them out of the affliction of Egypt, to give them the land of Canaan for a possession. I'm not going to go too much longer because my phone's going to get hot on me. Chapter 79. And in those days Moses was feeding the flock of Reuel the Midianite, his father-in-law, beyond the wilderness of Sin. And the stick which he took from his father-in-law was in his hand. And it came to pass one day that a kid of the goats strayed from the flock. And Moses pursued it, and it came to the mountain of God, to Horeb. And when he came to Horeb, the Lord appeared there unto him in the bush. And he found the bush burning with fire, but the fire had no power over the bush to consume it. And Moses was greatly astonished at this sight, wherefore the bush was not consumed, and he approached to see this mighty thing. And the Lord called unto Moses out of the fire, and commanded him to go down to Pharaoh, king of Egypt, to send the children of Israel from his service. And the Lord said unto Moses, Go, return to Egypt, for all those men who sought thy life are dead. And thou shalt speak unto Pharaoh to send forth the children of Israel from his land. And the Lord showed him to do signs and wonders in Egypt before the eyes of Pharaoh, in the eyes of his subjects, in order that they Moses hearkened all that the Lord had commanded him. And he returned to his father-in-law and told him the thing, and Reuel said to him, Go in peace. I love this story. And Moses rose up to go to Egypt, and he took his wife and sons with him. And he was at an inn in the road, and an angel of God came down and sought an occasion against him. And he wished to kill him on account of his firstborn son, because he had not circumcised him, and had transgressed the covenant which the Lord God had made with Abraham. For Moses had hearkened to the words of his father-in-law, which he had spoken to him, not to circumcise his firstborn son. Therefore he circumcised him not. And Zipporah saw the angel of the Lord seeking an occasion against Moses. She knew that this thing was owing to his not having circumcised her son Gershom. And Zipporah hastened and took of the sharp rock stones that were there. And she circumcised her son, and delivered her husband, her son, from the hand of the angel of the Lord. And Aaron the son of Amram, the brother of Moses, was in Egypt walking at the riverside on that day. And the Lord appeared to him in that place, and he said to him, Go now toward Moses in the wilderness. And he went and met him in the mountain of God, and he kissed him. And Aaron lifted up his eyes and saw Zipporah, the wife of Moses, and her children. And he said unto Moses, Who are these unto thee? And Moses said unto him, They are my wife and sons, which God gave to me in Midian. And the thing grieved Aaron on account of the woman and her children. And Aaron said to Moses, Send away the woman and her children, that they may go to her father's house. And Moses hearkened to the words of Aaron, and did so. And Zipporah returned with her children, and they went to the house of Reuel, and remained there until the time arrived when the Lord had visited his people, and brought them forth from Egypt from the hand of Pharaoh. And Moses and Aaron came to Egypt, to the community of the children of Israel. And they spoke to them all the words of the Lord, and the people rejoiced, an exceeding great rejoicing. And Moses and Aaron rose up early on the next day. And they went to the house of Pharaoh, and they took in their hands the stick of God. And when they came to the king's gate, 2 young lions were confined there with iron instruments. And no person went out or came in from before them, unless those whom the king ordered to come. When the conjurers came and withdrew the lions by their incantations, they brought them to the king. And Moses hastened and lifted up the stick upon the lions, and he loosed them. And Moses and Aaron came into the king's house. And the lions also came with them in joy, and they followed them, and rejoiced as a dog rejoices over his master when he comes from the field. When Pharaoh saw this thing, he was astonished at it, and he was greatly terrified at the report, for the appearance was like the appearance of the children of God. And Pharaoh said to Moses, "What do you require?" And they answered him, saying, "The Lord God of the Hebrews has sent us to thee, to say, send forth my people that they may serve me." And when Pharaoh heard the words, he was greatly terrified before them. And he said to them, "Go today and come back to me tomorrow." And they did according to the word of the king. When they had gone, Pharaoh sent James and Jambres his sons, and to all the magicians and conjurers and counselors which belonged to the king, and they all came and sat before the king. And the king told them all the words which Moses his brother Aaron had spoken to him. And the magician said to the king, "But how came the men to thee on account of the lions which were confined at the gate?" And the king said, "Because they lifted up their rod against the lions and loosed them, and came to me, and the lions also rejoiced at them, as a dog rejoices to meet his master." And Balaam the son of Beor the magician answered the king, saying, "These are none else than magicians like ourselves. Now therefore send for them, and let them come, and we will try them." And the king did so. And in the morning Pharaoh sent for Moses and Aaron to come before the king, and they took the rod of God and came to the king and spoke to him, saying, "Thus saith the Lord God of the Hebrews, send my people that they may serve me." And the king said to them, "But who will believe you that you are the messengers of God, and that you come to me by his order? Now therefore give a wonder or sign in this matter, and then the words which you speak will be believed." And Aaron hastened and threw the rod out of his hand before Pharaoh and before his servants, and the rod turned into a serpent. And the sorcerers saw this, and they cast each man his rod upon the ground, and they became serpents. And the serpents of Aaron's rod lifted up its head and opened its mouth to swallow the rods of the magicians. And Balaam the magician answered and said, "This thing has been from the days of old, that a serpent should swallow its fellow, and that living things devour each other. Now therefore restore it to a rod as it was at first, and we will also restore our rods as they were at first. And if thy rod shall swallow our rods, then shall we know that the Spirit of God is in thee. And if not, thou art only an artificer like unto ourselves." And Aaron hastened and stretched forth his hand and caught hold of the serpent's tail, and it became a rod in his hand. And the sorcerers did the like with their rod. And they got hold each man of the tail of his serpent, and they became rods as at first. And when they were restored to rods, the rod of Aaron swallowed up their rods. And when the king saw this thing, he ordered the book of records that related to the kings of Egypt to be brought. And they brought the book of records, the chronicles of the kings of Egypt, in which all the idols of Egypt were inscribed, for they had thought of finding therein the name of Jehovah, but they found it not. Pharaoh said to Moses and Aaron, Behold, I have not found the name of your God written in this book, and his name I know not. And the counselors and wise men answered the king, We have heard that the God of the Hebrews is a son of the wise, the son of ancient kings. Pharaoh turned to Moses and Aaron and said to them, I know not the Lord whom you have declared, neither will I send his people. And they answered and said to the king, The Lord God of gods is his name. And he proclaimed his name over us from the days of our ancestors, and sent us, saying, Go to Pharaoh, and saying to him, Send my people that they may serve me. Now therefore send us, that we may take a journey for 3 days in the wilderness, and there may sacrifice to him from the days of our going down to Egypt. He has not taken from our hands either burnt offerings, oblation, or sacrifice. If thou wilt not send us, his anger will be kindled against thee, and he will smite Egypt, either with the plague or with the sword. And Pharaoh said to them, Tell me now his power and his might. And they said to him, He created the heaven and the earth, the seas, and all the fishes. He formed the light, created the darkness, caused rain upon the earth, and watered it. Made the herbage and grass to sprout. He created man and beast and the animals of the forest, the birds of the air and the fish of the sea, and by his mouth they live and die. Surely he created thee in thy mother's womb, and put into thee the breath of life, and reared thee, and placed thee upon the royal throne of Egypt. And he will take thy breath and soul from thee, and return thee to the ground whence thou wast taken. And the anger of the king was kindled at their words, and he said to them, But who amongst all the gods of nations can do this? My river is mine own, and I have made it for myself. And he drove them from him, and he ordered the labor upon Israel to be more severe than it was yesterday and before. And Moses and Aaron went out from the king's presence, and they saw, for the taskmasters had made their labor exceedingly heavy. And Moses returned to the Lord and said, Why hast thou ill treated thy people? For since I came to speak to Pharaoh, what thou didst send me for, he has exceedingly ill used the children of Israel. And the Lord said to Moses, Behold, thou wilt see that with an outstretched hand and heavy plagues Pharaoh will send the children of Israel from his land. And Moses and Aaron dwelt amongst their brethren, the children of Israel, in Egypt. And as for the children of Israel, the Egyptians embittered their lives with the heavy work with which they imposed upon them. All right. There we go for today. Before I get off here, as I always do, like to thank each and every one of you for joining me whenever you can. Thank you all for your subscription to my channel. I appreciate you all very much. And I hope God blesses you. And I will see you all on Colin's stream here in a little while. Thank you for joining me. God bless you and have a good evening.